Alright, so this is my second attempt at my second video. My first one went a little long and I tried to upload it anyway, but they're saying my account isn't confirmed even though it is, so they wouldn't let me upload something long in 15 minutes. So let's give this another shot. First video I uploaded to my personal account. This is the first one to Lou Know It. I'm Lou. Solution, and this is a review of the 2016 reboot of Ghostbusters. The reason I did this reboot review is because my experience and opinion of the movie differs from what seems to be the consensus, so I thought it'd be a good place to start. Hopefully after this I'll be doing more reviews and see where it goes. So to try and address the criticisms that I've heard. Basically, one was that the humor of it wasn't fit to, like, it was just the actors in it, their brand of humor, the comedians, their brand of humor kind of set in the Ghostbusters world, but it wasn't, these weren't characters that were kind of crafted for the story. They were just doing their own humor, and a lot of it was ad-libbed, and therefore it wasn't true to, I guess, the franchise. And my feeling on that is that the original was the same thing. Bill Murray was doing his brand of humor. Yeah, the role was written. It was written for John Belushi originally. He died. They gave it to him. I don't know how much he ad-libbed, how much it was written, but I know that the delivery and the style of it was all his brand of humor. It was, sarcastic, dry. Dan Aykroyd was Dan Aykroyd. It was their brand and style of humor. It was their rapport, which is the same thing with the current cast. So I don't really see that as an issue. I think the first one was better written. Characters were a bit better. Story was better, but I don't think that it's because that the first one. I think it's just the remake, the reboot wasn't as well written. It wasn't that they're doing something different. I think they're doing basically the same thing, and just the script wasn't quite as good. Number two. People, were saying this movie is man-hating, and that was fueled by the kind of contentious debate that started with the response to the trailer, and then you had Paul Feig and Melissa McCarthy basically saying that it was misogyny, and there was some misogyny. I mean, there's, whether that was a very small minority of the people, there's no question that there was definitely misogynistic response to the trailer and to the whole project in general. And so because they kind of played up that angle, people then, I think, took offense to that, because there was also a good portion of people, probably the majority, that were really just didn't like it for other reasons. Now, I'm not so sure about whether it was just the quality of it. I didn't think the trailer was that terrible. I don't really get why people think it was like that terrible of a trailer to be the most disliked trailer in YouTube history. That just doesn't. I don't really see that. I think a big part of it comes from the fact that it's a reboot of a beloved, highly regarded movie, classic, one, and two, it's people have been asking for a continuation of it, like a straight sequel. So not only are you getting a reboot, but you're getting a reboot of a movie where you're asking for something different. And so I think people resented that. I think that was a big part of it. I think there was an element of they didn't like the fact that it was all women. I think there's an element. I mean, I've always said I'm a big fan of comedy. There's not as women aren't, stand-up comedians aren't as funny in general. Female stand-up comedians, There are some exceptions. For me, and obviously that's a subjective thing, but so I think there's, I think there was an element of that. People say, well, people saw movies like Bridesmaids and stuff like that, but that wasn't, I think that wasn't, the female element was pushed in the marketing of this reboot. Like, even though Bridesmaids felt kind of like a female version of some of the recent comedies at the time, it wasn't like really, there wasn't press about it that way. Like, this one was like, a lot of it was focused on the fact that it was female cast, and so that evoked a response against that from some people. So I don't think they were completely off base by recognizing that, but at the same time, they definitely went overboard. They should have just went along with it. Anyway, let's get back to the movie. So I didn't see the movie as man-hating. I saw it as, these female comedians doing their brand of humor in the Ghostbusters world. I think that they all had respect for the original, just from hearing them talk about it and stuff. They just did their kind of version of it. They did their brand of humor. And they definitely had a female-centric kind of perspective. So a lot of people were saying it was man-hating because people were saying that all the male characters were negatively portrayed, and there was an element of that. But I think that was just, they were doing things from sort of a female perspective, and so plenty of movies have the bimbo character of a female. This time they had a man be that character. It wasn't. I can see where people are coming from. I think there's some truth to it, but I don't think it was man-hating. I think it was definitely slanted towards a female perspective, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think most movies, the majority of movies, are slanted towards a male perspective, and therefore, why not have something slanted towards a female perspective? I have a daughter, she liked it. I've heard all the actors talking about how they enjoyed the fact of seeing little girls dress up as Ghostbusters, and I like the fact that they're pushing something that doesn't fall in the typical gender roles. I think that's an issue with movies and society in general. I've come to think that more raising a daughter, and so it wasn't man-hating to me. It was a female kind of centric perspective in certain ways, but it didn't really hurt the movie in my estimation. And like I said, there's plenty of movies that are male-centric, and that those movies doesn't necessarily hurt the movie for those movies. So another complaint was Leslie Jones' character was like the stereotypical black character. Why was she working in I heard one interview asking them, about why was she working in a token booth, and then her kind of over-the-top loud reactions and the way that she talked. But that's Leslie Jones. That's the way she talks in interviews, and that's her kind of style of humor. And she was also playing this kind of the every man character, in that she was the only non-scientist, and so she was reacting to the craziness of these paranormal encounters in a way that was closer to the way a normal person would, or an average person would react, as opposed to the way that the other characters were reacting, which was kind of like, whoa, wow, let's study this, analytical and all that. She was like, this is crazy. What am I looking at here? So that was the point of the character. I don't think the point of the character was to be stereotypically black. I think that the point of the character was to be reacting in have a more reactionary dialogue, and have just that the character be more reactionary, like in terms of reacting to what she was seeing. And then the way that she chose to do that was the way that she chooses to do her humor. It was the way that it was natural for her, and therefore felt authentic for her, and therefore felt authentic to me, and didn't feel like it was they were kind of creating a stereotypical character. You could argue that she's acting in a certain stereotypical manner, but I don't think it was particularly negative. Therefore, I don't think it was an issue. And she was actually my second favorite character behind Kay McKinnon. So, and that's another issue. Another negative that I heard is that Kate McKinnon's character was too over the top and ridiculous and too much of a character, kind of, which goes against what the other criticism, which is that they weren't playing characters enough. So I like that's, you know, to kind of transition segue to what I liked. Kate McKinnon was, to me, the best thing about the movie. I liked her a lot. Melissa McCarthy was probably the most, and the one I liked the least, like the most kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a bit tired of her whole shtick. She's the only one of the actors in that movie that kind of has a shtick, really, at this point to me. Kristen Wiig, I guess, has a certain way about her that kind of is somewhat consistent from movie to movie, but she, you know, I thought she was decent in this, but I liked Kate McKinnon a lot. I liked almost all the scenes with her. I thought she was funny. I liked her little quips and her little, just her mannerisms and the way that she did stuff, and so that's one thing I liked about it. I liked Leslie Jones. I thought she was, you know, not hilarious, but kind of funny, and it worked well, the dynamic of having her be the one that was kind of reacting to all this stuff. Special effects people were complaining about that. I feel like the special effects weren't great, really. I mean, I saw it a little bit after the fact. I didn't see it when it first came out, so it was already a little bit behind the times when I saw it, but this one the special effects and the ghosts were good, especially the first two ghosts. The end, it was hit or miss with some of them, but I liked the final, like, action scene, and the part with Kate McKinnon where she pulls the guns out and licks one of the guns. It was funny. It was well done. I saw the movie twice. I saw it once with my daughter and then once with my daughter and my wife, because my wife wanted to see it. Both my daughter and my wife liked it. People were clapping at the end of the first one that I saw, so I don't, I'm confused a bit by the level of hate the movie's gotten. I can see it it's not a great movie, but it's not terrible. It's not even bad in my opinion. It's, it was enjoyable for me. It was enjoyable 2 times through, which I there's a lot of movies I couldn't say the same for. So what else did I like? Chris Hemsworth was he was pretty funny. I mean, that was a bit ridiculous. Like they went hard with how stupid he was. That was a bit ridiculous, but he wasn't. He did a good job with that role. It was kind of funny to me. And yeah, pretty much all the 4 leads, except for probably Melissa McCarthy, had scenes where, had moments where I thought, they thought they were really funny. There's a scene with Kristen Wiig where she's trying to convince the mayor to do something, and they're pulling around. It's slapstick, and it's not, but it's funny, and I enjoyed it. So I enjoyed the humor largely. I enjoyed the final action scene, which is something the original never had. The original never had any real kind of action-y type stuff. Action-y, I don't like that sound of that, but it didn't have any, because this is like, I wouldn't call this an action movie, but the first didn't have any really. It had some kind of set pieces, but they were all played for laughs. Like, there was nothing that was supposed to be like, oh, that looks cool, really. Or at least nothing that did look particularly cool to me. It was more about the idea of stuff, and it was more for laughs. And this one was mostly for laughs, but at the end they had a solid sort of action sequence, which was cool. And yeah, basically, the movie was, I feel like, kind of, well, that's one other thing. The movie was sort of marketed towards kids, and I heard some people complaining because they have like a queef joke in it, and that's not, like, why is a fart joke acceptable and a queef joke not? Like, somebody explain that to me, because they're both, essentially the same thing, except one is exclusive to women, and somehow that is the one that seems to be, people have an issue with. I guess because it relates to a private part, but I mean, ass, I just don't get it. To me, so I like this. My daughter liked it. I felt like it was family friendly, and solid, like 6.5 movie, and that's it. So tell me what you think in the comments, and more reviews to come.